Welcome to Stepping on the Mat podcast, episode 013 with me, your host, Aaron Martinez. My guest today is no stranger to the world of coaching. He is a multi-sport high school coach and teacher. With over a decade of coaching experience, he is currently the head coach for the Carlisle Wildcats wrestling squad. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Jason Mehrhoff. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, so we've been sitting here getting to know each other a little bit, and I always appreciate the stories that happen pre-show. It's like any other filming I've ever done. It's like sometimes the coolest and the most impactful moments between me and the person happens off camera. So thanks for sharing your story with me before the show got started. So to get going here, tell me what's been going on. I know you're like all into football season right now, but tell me what's been going on in your life right now.
Yeah, actually, we're week 3 into football. Since I coach football and wrestling, we've been working hard all summer in both sports. So kind of juggling both sports at the same time. But yeah, next week's homecoming at Carlisle. So we're right in the thick of it.
Who's your guys' homecoming against?
We have our games against Indianola.
So
they've got a tough team. So and they're always well coached in both sports. So
now how does that work? How do the school or whatnot pick like the who you're going to go against for homecoming? How does that get selected? Do you know?
I wish I knew. I know that it's a non-district game for us. So there's, I would say, less pressure on the district and playoff implications. Usually we like to have it a little earlier in the year. It's been week 3 or 4. If we've got a home game, we just kind of schedule homecoming at Carlisle about that time. So that's, I don't know if there's any magical answer to that.
I always thought like it was like because you don't want to play the best team during homecoming, but when I was in high school, we always seemed like we got the teams that weren't super great.
Well, I won't say that about our opponent for sure. I'm from a small school originally, and I would say that's what we try to do. But at Carlisle, we just play whoever is on the schedule at that particular time. Right. So.
And you mentioned you've been, in that grind time with, getting the wrestlers on the off-season wrestling and then moving into football. How many wrestlers do you have that are on the football team, if any?
We have actually quite a few, especially in the past. We've had our football coach does a great job of helping us recruit wrestlers. I know, especially for his big guys, he really likes to have people who can move their feet, understand leverage, just basic man-to-man combat basically at that point in the trenches. So I think we have 4 or 5 different guys that have starting roles on the football team that are also going to impact our wrestling team this coming winter. Last year we had a ton of guys on the football team and the wrestling team. It really helped out what we were trying to do in our success last year in both sports.
Yeah. I bet that kind of rolls over. You got them as, so many months for football, and then they see the same coach moving over into wrestling. That's awesome.
Yes. Oh yes, and sometimes it's great for them. Sometimes it's not as much fun. But especially with our run last year in football, they had a great run. We made the Dome last year, and I told the guys, especially the seniors, you could have a week off to rest because the the wrestling season started right off the bat on that Monday, and instead of taking that time off to rest, they were in there leading the charge. They really, it was just a great culture builder that they decided that they were going to just not take any time and roll right into it. So
right. And one big topic that comes in when it comes to wrestling is weight management. Are those guys bulking up right now?
Well, it's been warmer the past couple weeks, so they've tried to bulk up over the summer, and some of them got a little bigger, maybe a little bit bigger than I wanted. But
yeah.
And they wanted. We can get them down. It's not that much of a problem, buddy. They'll as long as they manage it correctly, I think we'll be okay. But we're trying to figure out what weights we'll have and where will be tough in the upcoming season, and you just have to wait and see where they get.
Yeah. Much respect for that. I know you teach English.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
What grade do you teach for that?
High school. So
just
mainly freshmen and juniors.
Okay. Freshmen, juniors. Yeah. So you're teaching high school, English, you're coaching football. You're going to move into wrestling season.
Absolutely.
And I imagine that has an impact in the family, or I'm sure you found balance with that at this point. So maybe tell me a little bit about your family.
Originally, I wouldn't have it any other way. My family, when I was growing up, my father was a wrestling coach in Southwest Iowa. So, and my mother was a cheerleading sponsor. So every Saturday during the winter, we knew where we were going to be. We were going to be in a gym. So that's just kind of how my life has gone as far as that goes. I know I went to college, and Northwest Missouri didn't have a wrestling team. Even if they did, I don't know if they would have wanted me all that much. But, I got away from wrestling for about 4 years. And then I went back and helped out my father coaching, and I decided that's just what I wanted to do. That's where I wanted to be. So I wouldn't have it any other way. Luckily, my wife is very understanding of both seasons. She knows that time is difficult during the football and wrestling season, and she makes it when she can to the football game. She makes it when she can to the wrestling meets, but it's not an every time thing. She tries to find some balance with our daughter, and who's just turned 6, so she's all over the place.
A little
with soccer
firecracker time.
That's right. Well, we just spent some time in the hospital. She decided to not use her hands when falling off of playground equipment. So
Sure.
has a good old. She's gonna probably have a good old scar, but I told her it makes her look tough. So it'll be great. But yeah, having a family that's very understanding of the situation. I know my wife's sister-in-law, her husband coaches. Now he's going to get into, he used to coach for Woodward Granger for the help out with the boys, and now he's helping out with the girls' side of Woodward Granger. So I know there's just a lot of understanding on both sides of the family about what it takes, really, to be part of coaching.
Sure. And what's your wife do for a living?
She works as. It's very difficult to understand for me, but she works in the communications department for Wellmark right now. So,
okay, cool.
She has worked at a couple different places for communication and such. So she's kind of in the communications side and the HR side. So she's kind of dabbles in both.
Sure. And what's your daughter? What's she like to do?
Well, right now she's into soccer.
Cool.
But ultimately, she likes to ride bikes around the neighborhood and hang out with friends around the neighborhood. And she does get into a little basketball, but I know for some people that's a bad word around here. But she's not very good at it. So I'm going to try to steer her into wrestling here this winter if I possibly can.
And Carlisle has a female wrestling squad as well?
Yep. We started last year like everyone else. Our longtime assistant and head coach, John Crippen, decided to help out the girls team. So he's actually assistant. And Alicia Bibler, who just did a great job last year, not knowing a whole lot about wrestling, came in and was the head wrestling coach over in Carlisle. So it was, they had a pretty successful season. There was a lot of people that, had never wrestled before.
Sure.
But really wanted to. They really wanted to, but they didn't have really that opportunity that they were looking for. And I know they've held some open mats over the summer and had upwards of 20 girls, which from just a standpoint of you're looking at, an open mat over the summer when you had maybe 10 to 15 girls last season, and you're growing just in the offseason. That's awesome. They've done a great job.
Yeah. I'm super excited about it. The female side of the wrestling world.
Yes.
It's just going to grow. I think it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. So, yeah. So we talked a little bit about your family. We talked a little bit about your dad being, kind of a role model for your future almost, not intentionally, but just like that's just kind of how you rolled into it.
Yep.
So maybe let's back it up to like your origin story of like how you got introduced to wrestling.
Well, like I said earlier, it was right from the beginning. We knew where we were going to be every Saturday. For me, wrestling, I didn't really even start until about second or third grade. I'm old enough that we didn't start in kindergarten. We started a little bit later with those sports. And my father helped coach the little kids. He helped coach the middle school because we were at Cam, which if you know where that is, it's right by Atlantic, but it's I don't know, it's far southwest Iowa. So I grew up around wrestlers and cheerleaders as far as that goes, and it just became a part of an extended family to me. As I was growing up, it's hard. It's difficult really to explain. It just was who you were. I mean, I remember stories that, I would be, they would sneak me into vets with the cheerleaders sometimes, getting into state wrestling tournament. I remember one time, I was too young. I think I was 2 or 3. They left me at vets, one time on the mats. So they got back to the hotel because they were staying in a hotel because we lived over an hour away. And my mother and father were communicating back and forth. Where's Jason? I don't know. They found out they left me. And so I was just sitting on the mats looking up at the lights when they found me. And like I said, I couldn't have been older than 2 or 3 at that point. But yeah, I mean, father never had massive teams. I graduated with 34 people total. So we were a small 1A. It wasn't a large group. But it was fun to be a part of that group, especially going into high school. I wasn't a great wrestler, to be completely honest. I was 500 for the first 3 years probably. But I had tough people around me to train me, and I really took it as a badge of honor when they were successful. I know that sounds weird to a lot of people. And we talk about this in my program. Like, it doesn't matter, it matters obviously how hard you work and your accolades when you get them or when you earn them, but it's just as important to train the guy that you're competing and wrestling against and with, in the wrestling room. So I wrestled 171 my last 2 years of high school, and the 160 pounder my junior year won state. And then, 2 years later, after I'd graduated, the 189 pounder won state. So,
and those were probably some of your main training partners.
They were my
correct?
training partners. Absolutely. Well, the 60 pounder had a whole bunch of training partners because he was just good, just amazing. His name's Garrett South, and went on to wrestle in college collegiately and won 3 D3 national titles as well. So I was surrounded by guys who frankly beat me up on a daily basis, which made me tougher, made me better. It made me a tougher person, going through physically and mentally, and sometimes with my dad in the room emotionally. But I like to think that I made those guys better as well. The 60 pounder was more of a slick balance guy, and the 189 pounder was a bruiser. I mean, he was the physical side of wrestling for sure on a daily basis. So, which again, like I said, I wasn't extremely talented, as far as that goes, but, helping push those guys, to be the best versions of themselves as well.
Sure.
Kind of led me into what I like to do now, whether it's mentally or if I have to get in and wrestle a little bit physically, just training the guys to be better, in all walks as much as possible. But, like I said, that was in high school. And then I thought I was done with wrestling. Went to Northwest Missouri. They didn't have a wrestling team. And even if they did, I didn't know, like I said, if they would want or need me on the team. They had a club later on when I was about a semester away from graduating, so I didn't even get involved with that. But really what drew me back, like I said, was helping my father out. He had maybe 5 guys in the CAM wrestling team at that point. And there was a couple kids that were, we still had a state qualifier or 2, just it was dwindling. But I came back and really helped out over winter break. I was going skiing for the first time. I'd never been skiing, and balance sports aren't really my thing until I've done it quite a bit. So I knew I was going to fall. So what better way to practice falling? I know this sounds weird, but practice falling than going to a wrestling practice
Sure.
and falling down repeatedly for a while. And so I did that, and I just knew I knew I wanted to go back. I wanted to teach. I'm not quite sure at that point what. And then I knew I wanted to go back and coach. I knew I wanted to go back and make a difference in people's lives. And so kind of switched my major, and the rest is history for that point, from that point on.
Awesome. One thing I want to grab out of that conversation right there is that recipe of having Coach Dad, right? Like I've seen it enough. I'm a coach dad too.
Yeah.
So like I've had those, successes, and then those moments where I'm just like, oh, maybe this isn't working out so great, So how was that with you and your dad being in the room, your dad being the head coach and you being a student of his,
That's a great question. I've seen it multiple ways. We actually have a situation like that on the Carlisle wrestling team. And I've, at other schools that I've been at, we've had coaches and wrestlers, and it's been different every time. Honestly, when I was younger, I thought I knew everything. And because of that, I was very difficult to coach. I was probably kind of a difficult young man, as far as that goes. And that's what my father would probably tell you. But he tried. He was a pusher. He would push people. He knew that, we taught technique, we worked on that, but we were going to outwork people in the wrestling room. We were going to be in better shape. And that was tough for me. That was tough for me because I thought I knew what I was doing. I knew how to handle things. I knew how to handle weight management. I knew how to, handle my next opponent. I knew what moves I was supposed to be good at. I knew what what my opponents were doing. But I knew, right now, understanding what I know now, I knew nothing.
Sure.
When I was younger, knew nothing, compared to, what he was trying to teach me. And it was tough. So when I was younger, and not a sob story or anything, but my mother passed away when I was in 5th grade. So it was my father who raised my sister, my younger sister, and I. And, that was hard.
Yeah, I'm sure
that was
it was.
hard on my sister too, obviously. So I would, be at practice, and he was a teacher, so I'd have him in school. We'd have an hour and a half at one point every other day in school where he was my teacher. I'd have him for an hour and a half to 2 hours as a football coach and wrestling coach, and then I'd have him at home where sometimes it was difficult for him to turn off coach mode.
Yeah.
And which I completely understand. I know that now. But it was all in the idea of making me better, both in sport and just a better person. And like I said, it was difficult because it was, my guys get me for 2 hours tops other than teaching a day. If they had to live around me, I think they would be a little more frustrated as well. And I know, and not to say that their parents don't help coach them up too and do the right things as far as that goes, but it's tough. It's tough being a coach's kid. Even if they have a great relationship, it's still, it's a competitive sport. It's a tough sport. You want to be, you want to physically be better than other people. And if you ever have that, there's going to be differing opinions.
I think there's a lot of expectations too, like maybe it may never be voiced, but it's like in this like floating world, where it's like, that's the coach's son. I've heard that a lot, even when the kids are talking and they're going to get ready to wrestle somebody, that's the coach's son. That's why he's so good, or this, so there's some expectations there. And also what you mentioned is something very familiar to me as when I was in the military is like, I had to learn how to put my boots at the door, and like, and I didn't know that for a long time, when you're leading people and you lead with a certain type of static mentality, and rigidness to get things done, I had to learn at some point that wasn't successful at the house. And I had to learn how to take my boots off and then take my uniform off right away and just like unidentify with that side of myself. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people understand that out there. But especially as a young man, trying to figure that out, and then with a father that's kind of wading through things, and that's not to say. So I come from a great community. Anita's amazing. We have family friends that helped out, raising the heathens my sister and I became. There were people there to help out. We went to a family on Wednesdays, and ate supper. We had our babysitter, who was basically like a mother to me.
Sure.
Who would, if we needed anything, would take us in. But it was just, and it wasn't ever. It was one of those things where it wasn't ever that life changed, but it wasn't. It's bad, but it was one of those things where everybody did the best they could to help everybody out, and it allowed my dad to coach. He was a great coach and mentor to so many people. He had a gift for it, and if I could be the half the coach that he was, I would be happy, because he obviously someone I look up to, and like you said, modeled my life after, to a certain degree. So,
and what a great model that is like, I love teaching and mentoring, and and you're doing it on multiple levels. You're a teacher, which is like, that's the job, right? You're teaching, right? You're giving people information, and I'm sure that you get a lot of kids that you probably see yourself in, and have opportunities to do that on the field and on the mat as well.
Yes. And that's the great part of the job, is where you see really the development mentally, emotionally, physically in these young people. And it's why I do it. It's why I think, a coaching staff for Carlisle, the wrestling coach staff, and really all the coaching staffs at Carlisle, we kind of bond together pretty well. And that's, we're looking to improve young people as much as possible. We've had meetings as entire staffs before, just about how can we work together to make these kids better academically and scholastically, as far as that goes, emotionally, get them where they need to be. And of course, winning's great, but in their athletic endeavors, how can we make them better? So, it's just great to be part of a system, but really my whole life, that has just tried to develop and make kids better.
Yeah, with that eyes on that you have with yourself and then your staff as well, and you have these conversations, what are you finding that kids really need these days?
It's cliche. It's cliche. So I hate to say it, but and we say it in the school district, we say it within different coaching staffs, but they need to be able to not only build relationships with some sort of mentor or someone older that they can take as a role model, but continue to develop and build relationships and leaderships within themselves. And sports is the perfect avenue for that. And I wish I had a better answer for it, but that's the hard part. That's the great part, is the building of relationships between yourselves and the athlete, yourself and the student, yourselves within the coaching staff to work with them and kind of send that message to everybody. And that's again, as I talk about Carlisle in general, that's really what we try to do. And the great part about that is the message, especially on the boys' side. I talk about coaching football, but we have obviously the head football coach on staff. We have the head wrestling coach on staff. We have the head baseball coach on staff, and we have the head boys track coach on staff. So of the football team. So it's one of those where you're getting the same message in maybe every sport you're involved in. We like our kids to be involved in more than one sport, as many sports as possible, just to kind of branch out to try to improve yourself. And I know in the world of specialization and things like that, it's always good to branch out a little bit, and we do that at Carlisle, just really to help out other teams. I know my wrestling team wouldn't be great, or the wrestling team wouldn't be great without great guidance from the football team, and vice versa. So it's it's one of those systems where you're getting the message of making everyone better. You're getting the message of a form of leadership needs to happen, and developing those leaders, and then those leaders, having people follow them and do the right thing. And it just kind of trickles down to all the sports and really to at least on the boys' side, all the athletics. I know the girls' side, they do a fantastic job as well. They just don't have that interesting situation where you've got 5 head coaches on one sports staff.
Wow.
Like I said, and that's which is a great opportunity really for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like Carlisle's got their stuff together, getting these kids academically and mentally prepared for the next institution they're going to roll into in life.
Well, that's the hope, and that's always the challenge. It's a different situation each time, but we keep rolling with what we get.
Well, it sounds like you guys had a great season last year with your wrestling team.
Yes.
You guys had multiple state qualifiers.
Yes.
And some place winners. Maybe let's talk about some of the, the highlights and challenges of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. We, first and foremost, we had the team was solid because they focused on the team. They had individual goals, they had individual dreams that they wanted, but all of it centered around what we wanted to do as a team. And, unfortunately, we didn't get to where we wanted to be at the end as far as the team is concerned. But, we had some great leadership from our graduating seniors, and it didn't matter whether they were state qualifier or if they'd wrestled for a year or two. The seniors stepped up. I had more captains voted in, which is really odd. Usually we'll have 3 or 4 captains, but I think we had 6 last year just because they tied. It was one of those situations where I asked the coaching staff, what do we do? They're all right there. Everybody really wants these guys to be it. And we just decided they're all it,
Let's go.
Might as well. Let's get them going. So, last year's team was headed off by a pretty success, bouncing from football. This graduating senior class did an amazing job of leadership. They were great wrestlers. Don't get me wrong. They worked hard in the weight room. They worked hard in their other sports. But they were great leaders. They were able to do it the right way, encourage the right way. There's different types of leadership, and some of those leadership ways of leadership don't work with a lot of kids, but they were able to lead by example, do what they were supposed to do, work their butts off on a daily basis, and really what it came down to is hold each other accountable. If you can get a group of teenager boys to hold each other accountable to each other, not necessarily to the coaching staff, not to anyone else outside the room, but if you can get them holding each other accountable to the people in the room, there's no telling where they'll go. We had some very talented youth wrestlers that then became, like I said, those seniors, and they took their licks for years. Right. They were good in 7th and 8th grade, maybe some state, AAU qualifiers, place winners, but you roll into high school and it's a different story. It's a different
story. Kids start maturing at different times. Oh boy.
Absolutely. We had a couple of those guys that had just they hadn't grown into their bodies yet, and they were wrestling 45, 40, 52 when they were just freshmen or sophomores even. And a couple of those bigger guys were wrestling 70 and 82 when they were freshmen or sophomores and just getting beat up.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them that when they were juniors, they thought, hey, we'll just focus on football and we'll lift in the winter. And luckily it didn't come to that as far as that goes, because they were just, like I said, great leaders and really helped out. But they would do anything for each other. They would, put it out on the mat. There's a couple times where, as a team, you go through the duels, you say, okay, these are the matches that are going to be tight. These are the matches where we might be outclassed. And so what would happen is those seniors and some of the juniors would go talk to those kids as well, mm-hmm. and say, hey, this is a big match. This is a big match because you are important in our lineup, and work your stuff. Go out there, let it all go, and stay in great position. Really, and stay in great position and don't get pinned. Really, that's really the message. I mean, they were behind them. They told them they were behind them, and if you can keep it to even a tech fall, or you can keep it to a decision, or you can keep it to a major, we're going to be great. And then they would go up, and if they could, they would clean house with what they could. We had, I don't know the exact number, but more pins as a team than we'd ever had before. They were just dominating. They were, if they could put somebody on their back, they were going to end it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mentality the team had going into the season. And we weren't the best wrestlers all the time on the mat, but if they could find a way to put you on your back, they would do it.
Yeah.
And they would take care of business when they needed to. And it was just a ton. Like, we had 4 or 5 guys that had over 40 wins and almost 30 pins. Like, it was nuts. It was insane. And some of those guys we have coming back, which is great. But that was the mentality. We're going to go out. We're going to do as much as we can for the team. And we still have that. And a lot of those. So the bulk of our lineup were seniors, and then the other bulk of our lineup were sophomores. So we still got some really solid kids that, 4 state place winners coming back, another state qualifier coming back for us this coming year. And we're all part of it. And one of our better leaders wasn't even able to make state last year, and so he's ready to go. He's excited for this
pumped
year.
For that, yeah.
But like I said, we didn't reach the goals that we wanted to. We lost 2 duels last year, and both were to Ankeny Centennial. And hats off, we wrestled them twice at their place, and we came away with a tie to go to in the regional final, and it came to, I don't know, like the 9th criteria.
The criteria, yeah.
Yeah. And the 9th criteria was first points scored.
Oh man, they should do like a soccer and do like a shootout. You know what I mean?
Well, that would be great.
Take like your top 3 guys and have them do like a first takedown. Right? Do like absolutely. A first takedown for your top 3 guys. That'd be a great way to settle it instead of some stupid criteria.
Well, my assistant coach suggested that the head coaches go out there and wrestle.
Yeah,
I told him that's
not
a good idea. I'll send the assistant out. That's not going to happen. Come on now. But Coach Toronto's got a little bit of a sense of humor as far as that goes.
Is his son coming back this year? Is he?
He's a junior. Yeah,
he's a junior.
Yep, he's a junior.
Had
a great off season.
Yeah.
He went to Fargo again. Wrestled hard. You just run into tough people at Fargo. Made day 2. He and 2 other guys had some pretty successful Fargo runs, but again, they didn't end up where they wanted to be, and I think that's pushing them into the season. They want to get better. So another young man was Ryan Ryder that made it, and he lasted about as long as you can in Fargo without coming away with All-American, and he was he's tough. He's just a tough wrestler, and he for 2 years had really wrestled at weights that were probably out of his, just a little big.
Yeah.
But I mean, 2-time state qualifier. He got 6th at state last year. So I mean, he's just a competitor. And of course, Jackson Miller, coming back. He's a sophomore. He made it to Fargo as well. And Jackson had been busy all summer.
He was.
All the time. Does a fantastic job of being not only a great wrestler, but a good teammate, coming back when he can to open mats, which was basically all of them. Like he wouldn't miss them. Coming back and lifting with the football team. He's a starting outside linebacker as a sophomore for us right now. Just coming up and doing a fantastic job as far as that goes. So I'm very excited with those. And that's not to say those are the Fargo qualifiers. We had a couple more guys that were just wrestling about every weekend or every other weekend for Freco in the Freco season, which doesn't always happen for us. And it just got better, just trying to work their way into, a lineup or trying to find a way to make it to state.
Yeah. I was watching a couple of guys at states from Carlisle. Serrano, and then Jackson. Yeah, unfortunately, he had to forfeit his match.
Right.
It was, his dad's really good at keeping people updated. So as soon as I heard, I was like, oh, Ryan, oh man, it sucks, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was rooting for him.
Absolutely, and it would have been a fun match to watch for
sure.
that third. But we ran into we got to state, had the most state qualifiers ever for Carlisle with 10.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't it was the kids. They worked hard, and like I said, there's a couple guys that didn't even make state that pushed everyone else and just came up short. But we got to state in 4 days is a grind, and we had more. I mean, Jackson got injured at the end, but he gutted out the consolation placing match, just to try to score more points and get a little higher on the podium. But like again, scoring points for us, which put us in the top 10 in 3A, which we've never done before. But we also I think about our state run. You also had Jess Kersel, who was our 195 pounder. He was a hammer on the football team, but he was a fantastic leader for us in the wrestling room. And he and Haggerty had a great match, right? I realized, and we were ahead for a while, and Haggerty came back and ended up winning. And in that match, Jess just destroyed his knee. Like he beat himself. He did a great job rehabilitating it later, but I think he hurt his knee pretty bad. And the next day he came back and he said he was going to give it a go. I'm like, man, he's playing football in college right now, and I said, hey, you got a lot to live for, man. There's no reason to go out there and do anything bad. But he wanted to gut it out and had a conversation with his parents, and so they decided to wrestle the blood round. And he came out, and there's nobody bad at state when you're getting to the blood round. There's good wrestlers.
Yep.
And he was gonna gut it out. Couldn't, he got into a stance, and was able to fight off a little bit, defend a little bit. Which gave me a little hope as far as that goes, because if the guy can't defend himself out there, he can't. Yeah. It was a short leash for sure. And like I said, he gutted it out and ended up throwing the kid, early on, and pinned him and walks off the match like, that's it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, great job, man. That's fantastic. He, of course, as a true competitor, he's like, I could have beat the next guy.
Right.
I'm like,
right.
Well,
right.
We don't want to go that route. We don't want to think about that too much. But that was indicative of the whole team. We had a heavyweight that had to gain weight. He had to drink about a half a gallon of water or more each time just to make heavyweight, and made state. Was also in the blood round and ended up losing to a guy that was significantly bigger. But you're going to do that when you're 195 pounds and have to get to 196 to even wrestle heavyweight. So, and like I said, they wrestled for each other. They did it the right way. They were loose. That's one of the weirdest groups I've ever been a part of.
I've noticed that. I noticed that when obviously I was there to watch Norwalk wrestle you guys this last season, and it's one thing I look at is before the meet even starts is the comfort level of the teams and how they are. Yeah,
they that's part of the camaraderie between all. And there's a couple brother groups that the seniors were brothers and had younger brothers that were sophomores, and so. It was just kind of a family atmosphere as far as that goes. But I mean, I've never, you're down in Wells Fargo Arena and you're in the back alleys and trying to, getting warmed up, and they just interacted. Wrestlers are weird anyway, and I won't say who was doing this, but they might have had a hair straightener and they were practicing straightening each other's hair. Yeah. I probably shouldn't let, I'm not going to say names, but it just, they were comfortable with one another. Yeah. They loved one another. And I look to see what the juniors and seniors this year will do to
for sure
keep that going.
For sure.
Because I know that they've got it in them. They just got to come together as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as a coach, and we'll talk primarily about wrestling right now, even though we're in football season.
Nope, that's fine.
What would you say, like, one of your, values? Every successful program has values, ethics, and a philosophy. What would you say are some of the main things that stick out in your mind about how you lead in those areas?
Well, it's we base everything on. We talk about, we've got the 4 principles that we go by, that are plastered in our room. Of Wildcat Wrestling, which everybody has, their wrestling mindset ideals. We go with, we had last year, the group decided to put a piece of tape and put N+1, which means whatever coach tells us to do, that's the number, and then +1, whatever that is. And that's nothing new. That's something I'm sure they adopted from, Grandview does things like that. Champion mindset, champion groups always do that. But really, and we put it on, every Twitter post that we have, call it Wildcat Legacy. And Wildcat Legacy to us is, what are you leaving behind? Like, what are you doing now to make yourself better? But what are you leaving behind you? And that's tough, especially when you're a young man.
Yeah, you're young. Like, you don't think
like, who cares? Like,
yeah.
what? I don't care what this guy, who's going to show up 10 years later knows or sees about me. And it's more than really, we've got state qualifiers and a conference championship wall where we put conference champions' names and then state qualifiers and place winners on a wall, like everyone does. But it's more than that. It's more than that, the accolades. It's, who are you helping that's younger than you, that will make a difference in the team coming later on, or make a difference in their life, even, this year. We have former wrestlers that, and I'm sure other people do this, but former wrestlers that come back and help with the little kids program. Yeah. They help with little kids tournaments. They come back. What we do is we have some of the seniors, if they remember and turn their stuff in on time, we have them write a letter to next year's class.
Right.
Because legacy is important. We have record boards and we have all that stuff. But again, it's not necessarily about the records. It's how are you setting everybody up, and the idea that you are working to leave a positive thing behind you might not push you at the time, but it's something that you can keep in the back of your mind. It's like, okay, the more I try to develop my legacy, the better I'm going to make myself, and the better I'm making everyone else around me.
Right.
And that's the goal of what we're trying to do, is we're just trying to make everybody in it. And, for years we've had some talented people go through, but we really did focus on the team aspect. Like, what is the team leaving behind? What are you doing to make the team better? Who are you, not only going to be, but who are people going to see you as they come through?
Yeah.
We have our kids help with the little kids program now, like even, I'm sure a lot of people do that. And I got that when I was at I-35. They always had young men after practice. They would have little kids practice right after, and like, okay, you're staying. Like, who's staying tonight? I've got it. And they would kind of rotate through and just give back not only to the program but to the sport, just to kind of keep them lifelong wrestlers. And that's really our philosophy. Building those relationships happens when we realize that we're trying to make everyone better and looking for the next person coming up behind you, and what are they looking at? Because you're always being watched, really. We have our little kids night where we have them come in. It's usually when we go. We've got a beautiful gym. If anybody's ever been there, we call it the Whack. Just gorgeous, and that's where our wrestling room is. But we, at least one duel a year, go down to what we call the barn, which is the old gym where you pack people in, and we turn the lights off and put on a spotlight and just make a real fun atmosphere. We used to have some smoke, and we'd come out and we'd go out to Thunderstruck and just make it a fun event for everybody. And that's when we'd invite the little kids, and we want them to see that. We want those little kids watching that. We usually that night we have they're not cardboard. It's construction paper, take down 2, and we give those to the kids and have them flash it right along the mat. So,
that's cool.
Not that we want little kids taunting, opposing wrestlers, but
it's fun.
But it creates a fun atmosphere, and really that's if you're not a wrestler and you're just a regular guy in the student body, you're seeing that, you're either there or you're seeing that and how people are rallying around, and then you want to be a part of that.
For sure.
And if you're a little kid and you see all these guys cheering and all these, the parents on both sides and, fans, spectators on both sides, just almost on top of the action, you want to be a part. It's intimidating, but you want to be a part of that. Sometimes you just look, take a step back and kind of look at what's going on and like, well, this is about 2 seconds away from being, potentially a brawl. And that's happened. The brawls haven't happened, but it's getting to that point is it's fun. It's a fun atmosphere. It's a respectful atmosphere, when we're all done, we shake hands and life's good. But it makes a fun atmosphere, and really, and that's the beauty again of for me of Carlisle, because that gets put on by our athletic director, Darren Schreck, and Darren Schreck knows and loves wrestling, and he's a Hall of Famer. Was at Norwalk for quite a few years, Eagle Grove, and started at Carlisle before all of that, and has come back, and he loves the sport. He loves to do whatever he can. He helps out other teams when he can, with whatever they need as far as wrestling's concerned, and has done a fantastic job for us. But kind of setting up that atmosphere, it just makes it fun for everybody, and really develops what we're trying to do. And wrestling can be in a big, huge place and be boring, and you can sit back and wait for your kid to wrestle, and then you can turn around and talk to your friends for the whole time, or you can be involved in something bigger. And I think, when we do that, you're part of something bigger, and it's just a more, it grows the sport. It grows the sport all, people don't like to come to Carlisle to wrestle, and sometimes they love to do it because it's just a fun atmosphere. I've had, opponents, opposing coaches like, man, I wish we could do that. That would be fun. This is fun. Like, and then, like I said, over and over, I'll say it's just developing the sport and getting people there. The next step is doing that and having the girls wrestle also, and getting that step in, and whether it's before or after, and just getting that environment for everybody. And it just, it's something that the school can get behind. And
well, that would be a good time for me to come out and do the Access Granted episode with you guys.
That would be
perfect. I'd
time.
love to see some of that continuity and cadence you guys get, and come out and film for that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Come out and see how we're doing.
So, who would you say the 3 most influential people you've known in your life?
That's tough. I've talked about him at length. My father, obviously, just started off just, again, the pattern for where I've kind of gone in my life. I've been blessed to have many coaches in my life, that whether I was a competitor or maybe even an assistant, it's not necessarily always looking up to, but, someone you kind of model after. And I'm going to ruin your question, because it's going to be more than 3, I'm sure. My head football coach and assistant football coach, really taught me what hard work, dedication, and sacrifice really were. Besides my father, obviously, he was part of that staff as well. But even when I got into the coaching ranks, I went to Corning for my student teaching, and there was a couple coaches there. Coach Ashton actually let me come on and be a part of his team. He didn't know who I was, but he didn't care. He's like, if you want to, be part of this, then we'll let you help out. I was lucky enough to get to help out with I-35, and so you had Randy Calvert, Hall of Famer Randy Calvert, and Dean Downs, and those guys. They're really where I got the philosophy of the team is the important part. The wrestling, as much as we talk about as an individual sport, I tell the parents every year, I tell the kids at the beginning of every year, wrestling is the toughest team sport because there's no other sport in the world where you have to have 14 different guys of varying sizes, varying backgrounds, get into one and be on one mind. Especially when there's a situation where, it's easy to develop as an individual or even a partnership. But we want to think like that. And that's, I-35 is where I started and I kind of developed that. But even the coaches I work with now, I know the head, Mark Hoekstra over at Carlisle, besides being the head football coach, he works diligently as the strength and conditioning coordinator for the entire school. So him giving me a shot also, John Crippen was the head wrestling coach. So these guys giving me opportunities. I know when my dad and his team at CAM went over to be CAM Atlantic or Atlantic CAM, Coach Duff, I've pushed ideas off Coach Duff over in Atlantic, and they're split now again. But he develops the sport and develops his wrestlers almost better than almost anyone I've ever seen. And he's an open book. He'll let you know exactly what he's doing and how he's helping his wrestlers. And he just does a fine job over there. So it's a whole bunch of coaches that have helped me develop. As a person, there's a lot of people, obviously, but really just the tight-knit community of coaches have had a very large impact on who I've become and who the access to knowledge even that they've given me, and the opportunities depending where I've been that they've given me have really changed how I deal on a day-to-day basis with my athletes, how I deal on a day-to-day basis with my family, with my students and everybody around. So coaching is the toughest and the best job in the world because of that. And so that's why a lot of those guys have had a huge impact.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll pass that knowledge off to somebody else that's, coming up through the ranks. And I know one thing I've noticed about coaches that are good coaches is that they're always willing to share the knowledge.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's, what I learned at an early age from the coaches is what my dad specifically is like. My dad would always say, hey, I'm not a great coach, but I am willing to steal anything. I'll steal a move. I'll steal different techniques that can make my kids better. I'll go and talk to, and he would talk to any coach. Hey, how'd you do that? How'd your wrestler do that?
Sure.
And they're willing to talk about it. It's in a day and age where, there's secrecy, other secrets. Avenues of
we
of
ran into that with jiu-jitsu for many years. Like, the information stays in the dojo. No,
come on. With technology nowadays, nothing stays a secret for long. Somebody will figure it out. So, why not help other people out? It doesn't cost you anything, and really, if they're a competitor and it challenges you, it just makes you better as well.
Yeah.
And then if the goal is to make wrestling in the state of Iowa or just wrestling in general better, that's how you do it.
Yeah. I talked when I was interviewing Coach Mitchell on the show. He mentioned, he goes down and one of his favorite things to do is to go coach other coaches, and to give them that insight, and just it fills his spirit to be able to do that. So,
and he's a good one to go
he's
do
one
that.
of the best.
Holy cow, man.
My man. So here's a fun question. If we had if you could time travel and you can go anywhere in the past, who would you talk to?
Okay, that's a problem because I've got the wrestling side of me and the coaching side of me. That's one way. But I'm a nerd. Not saying that all language arts teachers are nerds, but I'm a huge nerd. So I teach different different books in school. I've always been interested in. That's gonna sound weird. The Roaring Twenties. I've always been interested.
Yeah.
I like The Great Gatsby. As odd and as weird as that might sound, I like The Great Gatsby. I would be interested to see how that worked. I know my grandfather was born in 1919, so and they talk about going through the Depression, and I don't want to be a part of the Depression, but kind of figuring out how the 20s and 30s worked. I think that's a fascinating time in our history, and I'm a history buff. I love history. Like I said, I'm a bit of a nerd as far as that goes. But yeah, that was an interesting question. I hadn't never thought about that. For the music, I'd go to the 70s, but I think maybe the 1920s. I guess.
What's your favorite 70s band?
I grew up with. My dad didn't let us listen to new music when I was growing up in the 90s and 2000s. He thought it was awful, which at the time, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Depending on, come on, Chumbawamba, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But the Eagles, he liked the Eagles. He was big Bob Seger fan.
Yeah.
So it was kind of and he'd go all over. We'd play a game. This is weird, but we'd play a game in the car. A song would come on the radio, and before it would show you who sang it, he would quiz me.
The guessing game. Yeah, for sure.
Quiz me over and over, and that's what we'd go on road trips all over the place, and that's what he'd do. He'd quiz me. All right, who sings this? Oh, it's Deep Purple. Okay, who sings this? Oh, that's the I don't know. He's like, guess who? I'm like, oh, okay, got it. Guess who? And he'd give me little hints and everything. But that's, it's memories of my father as a person. I can always take him as he always loved to travel, and when he'd travel, he would always, who sings this, and we'd have music as our common bond as far as that goes. But yeah, 70s and 60s, he really loved those decades, and he grew into music later on, but and never country. I know that's going to hurt people's feelings, but never country, especially in the 90s, he thought it was too twangy. He didn't like it. So
I'm on that boat.
Okay,
I'm not a country music fan.
Well,
sorry, country lovers out there.
sorry for telling you what we like and don't like. Don't be mad about that. It's okay. But yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the connection we have. And
yeah, I love how music kicks memory.
Absolutely.
It almost takes you. I felt like in my home, I had a lot of brothers and sisters, so every room was a different corridor of time and music.
Nice.
And it filled me as an adult. I have all those songs still in my mind.
Yes.
So, and they always draw back to memories. So, what would you say your favorite coaching memory is?
Well, God, I'm going to sound like a broken record on some of this stuff. So, I mean, honestly, last year we had a ton of great memories. I mean, we went out and, we were in a tough district, and we ended up winning the district. And we had great teams like Ankeny was there. Bondurant was there. It was
dominating too.
It was a tough district, and to come away with a banner, for a lot of people, it's you get a banner all the time, but it was important to us. It meant something to the kids, and so that was a great memory. As far as probably the best memory is in coaching, it would have been. It's a long time ago now, but we had when I was at Interstate 35, Coach Calvert let myself and Coach Tuttle, a guy I grew up with at school and college. He let us. We had 3 guys in the finals that night, and unfortunately 2 of them lost. But for one of those, Jordan Johnson was wrestling and just ended up the wrong side of it. He had a great tournament. He wrestled hard. Just when time ran out, he was behind, and that's the way it goes. But I was able to be in his corner and in the 1A mat, and then my father was actually coaching a guy at 135 in the 2A mat. So I've still got pictures of
That's awesome.
of, and it was a big deal to us. We got pictures and posters of, me coaching in one quarter and him in the other, and it was a fascinating night for our family. So that was probably one of my favorite coaching memories. And then we had, our 152 pounder was the one that his name's Dallas Houchins. He went on to wrestle for Grandview and be, I think, a 2-time runner up. He ended up winning, and that was part of that night. And it wasn't even about me. He was, he got done and he went and hugged his older brother, and, just being right there after he hugs his older brother, like, there's almost nothing better, at state than getting a hug. As weird as that sounds to some people, like whether it's for a championship or whether it's, they're so excited they made it into the finals, or, they made it through the blood round and you get, a big hug. They're just the emotion that comes off of that. And it's not even just for me. It's who they're, like I said, with Dallas and James, they had a bond, just like Jordan and his brother Mitch that night too. And there's just a lot of brothers that night, but just seeing them hug and smile in the background as they're doing it, it's, it transcends the sport.
Yeah, it does.
It takes it to a deeper level, for me. So, that night was important. That was an important night in my life. But like I said, there's tons of things within Carlisle as well, and that have happened recently, especially, districts being able to host it and take a banner at the end was really, really a great day. So.
Yeah, there's something powerful and organic about a hug.
Yes.
It's like they could do any other choice, but it's like just it happens.
Right.
It happens in an explosive manner, and it like you said, it transcends even the sport. It just turns into something like powerful.
Yeah.
So, what would you say your biggest pet peeve is as a coach? So listen up, incoming freshmen.
It within the system or within wrestling community? I don't know.
For wrestling, what would you say your, like when you're in the practice room, you have a pet peeve? It's either like, someone saying I can't do this, or just whatever your pet peeve is.
My pet peeve, and this has got to be everybody else's pet peeve, I'm sure as well, is when you know a kid isn't pushing himself, and then he isn't pushing his partner. Like you're just letting it we call it, when the football program, we call it brother-in-lawing somebody. Like you're going up and like, hey, I'm going to block you a little bit.
I'm going to steal that one from you.
But don't, that's not mine either. That one's stolen, believe me. But you know that they're capable of more. There's times to drill and slow things down, but when you need to go and they're just kind of leaning on each other, and like that's not making anybody better. And the problem is, if you're an upperclassman, that freshman or sophomore over there is looking straight at you the whole time. So the trick is, if it ever works out, and it has for us in the past, is that freshman and sophomore then either alert the coaching staff, or not really telling them, but holding them accountable, or say, hey man, what are you doing? What technique are you working on? Nothing. So there we go. Then get to it. If you can get the underclassmen to push the upperclassmen and vice versa, life's good. But when they're, for lack of a better term, brother-in-law on each other, it's a waste of time. There's no,
and it's not snitching. It's not snitching.
Okay.
The like you said, there's accountability.
Right.
In the military, everybody's a safety officer.
Yes.
So if you get your hands in your pockets, you're allowed to go up and tell that guy that's outranks you. That's the standard. Get your hands out of your pocket.
Absolutely.
So.
And that's, if anything, Coach Serrano talks about that, or my assistant coach Aaron Serrano talks about the standard on a daily basis. Iron sharpens iron, the standard, and where is it? How are you developing it? And how are you holding that line? Like, where are you in that? Where are you on that continuum of that line?
Right.
To make it better.
All right. Here's a tough one. Biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from that experience?
Wow. It's tough to talk about failures, I guess, as far as that goes. I don't I don't know. So actually, I've got one. And this is coaching related. This is wrestling related. My first year of coaching wrestling as a head coach, it was our first year in 3A, and we went to, I think it was Johnston, and we had to wrestle against Indianola, and I think Valley was there maybe, and Valley and Johnston and Indianola had some teams. They had solid lineups throughout, and we didn't get a state qualifier. We didn't get one, not one. And I know my dad had been through that at CAM because we didn't have very many people in lineup. So
yeah, 30-some people.
What's that?
Yeah, like 30-some people at the school.
Right.
I don't imagine
So
you had a big roster.
It wasn't, but it was. We had a new athletic director at the time. It was Mr. Schreck was there, and he had done a lot for the program right off the bat. We'd had state qualifiers before. We had one returning. He unfortunately had the unenviable task of wrestling heavyweight when he was undersized and ran into some guys that were tough. We had a really good 220-pounder that I think was seated second, and just ended up, Indianola does a great job, and their kid that we pinned earlier in the year, he came back and he beat us. We had good weights. We had some good weights. We had some good solid kids, and nobody made it to state that year, which was tough. And it was, you don't like to put too much on it now. Like I try to go with the gratitude and be grateful for things nowadays. But I was younger then, and it was tough. So I actually, and this is it's kind of odd, but so I've got a bunch of frames with pictures in my first year of coaching at I-35 when we had a bunch of state qualifiers. I have that picture, but inside that picture is a ticket to the state wrestling tournament. And it's a reminder that I will never go to the state wrestling tournament again if I have to buy a ticket as a coach. And I know that's going to sound weird to some people, but people don't ask me about it very often. It was a dark time. But ultimately I've got a ticket that I bought to go to the state wrestling tournament. And I never want to do that again. I never want to buy one. Like, they give you the wristband and so you can go to the sessions and you can do all that stuff. And so that's what I was, I kind of keep that as a reminder. It's like, hey, that's where you were. That's where you were. That's what happened at that particular point. And you ran into some tough competition, but you want to keep working to make it so that your kids can be successful. You make it. And I know, and that sounds like, coach, you're making that about yourself. You're making that about yourself. But
that goal reflects on the team.
Right. To me, if you try to make everyone on the team better, somebody's gonna make it to state. You're gonna push somebody. They're gonna push each other. So yeah, I've got a ticket, and I'm not quite sure the year right off the top of my head, but I've got a ticket to the state meet where I went and watched and as a spectator, and I didn't like it. And so I have that on my wall.
Yeah. Here's another good one. If you could be remembered for anything, what would it be?
Really, I mean, it's a great question. The only thing that really comes to mind right off the bat is I want to be a great father. I know that it shouldn't sound weird to anyone.
It's not an easy job.
I want to be a great father, and that's hard to do. I know I've been, and my daughter's 6, so I know it's been tough on her as far as understanding, why is daddy going to wrestle? But she knows, was you going to football, or you're going to wrestling, or you're going, you got something to do with teaching, and you just got to be gone. But I want to be a great father. It's the hardest job out there, and she's an amazing kid. So she deserves it. As a coach's son, I sometimes thought that dad put more energy into other people when I was younger, and I realized that he didn't. It was it was the right amount of energy for one thing.
Yeah.
He could compartmentalize better than I can, I
Yeah.
think. But he did a great job of that. But really, if I could be remembered as a great dad by my daughter, that would be the important part. Obviously, I want to be a great coach. Obviously, be great to be a role model, a mentor, someone could look up to. But when it comes down to it, I just want my daughter to know that I did whatever I could to make her life better and make her better also, because life's tough. So she's got to handle her way through it.
Yeah, parenting is seasons. It's 1 through 6, and then they change and become different. And then by the time that they're adults, I have adult children, so
Right.
it's now it's whoa. So one thing I've learned is just a piece of advice for you is just listen. Sometimes just get into that listening state. What would you say? So, and this can go from your teaching, just being in the classroom as well. What is your funniest story your students would tell about you?
Oh, well, I'm not sure what they would say in the class. I used to do some more zany things, back when teaching was, I don't know whether it was different or not, or people were different, or society was different. We'd keep track of songs that I would ruin. I would sing once in a while, or they would say something, and I would joke about how that connected to a song that I would then ruin for them. So that's good. I used to keep a running memory or a running list of quotes from my students. And they like to go, they sometimes like to, because I always told them I'm going to write a book of your quotes. If you don't want me to include your name, just let me know so I can do that. So there are a bunch of funny quotes that I have from, or interesting. Interesting is probably better with a few of them, a few quotes. Ultimately, I don't have one that really stands out. There's a lot of, simple stuff. Like one kid one time, asked me, and this wasn't me, this was them, asked me if homecoming was a home game this year. And, I had a kid that was about to graduate, and, we were talking about spelling of something, and I said, he was joking around. I like to buy a vowel. And I said, oh, okay, which one? And he says, B. All right, well, you're about to graduate in a week or two. You probably should, no, that's not a vowel. But no, he took it in stride after that. But just, there's some great connections within the classroom that it's hard to pick out any particular one. Unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer for you than that. But it's one of those where the development of relationships means this happens all the time.
Sure.
We just, the interaction between teachers and students is a phenomenal thing to me. It's so yeah, kids are going to say funny things all the time.
Yeah. My daughter thought, I asked her on Martin Luther King Day, because you get kids get that off school, and they're like, I was like, what do you even know about Martin Luther King? She's like, he was a president.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I was like, what are they teaching you over there at
Norwalk? Oh no.
Well, it was a good one though.
We'd get some of that for sure. They were confused about Ben Franklin not being a president, so I get that one.
But I love bringing it up, man. So we're getting towards the end of the interview here. What are you expecting out of the Wildcats this year for on the mat?
Like I said before, we've got some great guys coming back, some good leadership coming back, as far as talent's concerned, but we're back to it as far as we want to fill out a lineup. Our goal is to make state duels. Every season we're trying to make state duels. Like I said, we fell short last year, and we graduated some people, but we've got a lot of firepower coming back. I'm really excited about the young men we have coming back, whether they're hungry because they didn't make state. They're just new to the district. We have a couple guys coming in. As far as that goes, we've got a guy that was injured in the dome last year as a sophomore, and would have really helped out our lineup last year, but he busted his knee, and just one of the early plays, and he's a great kid. He ended up being, we call him our Twitter czar. So any meet, we would let him hop on Twitter and tell the world how we were doing that particular day. So he's coming back, and we're excited to see his development. We've got a couple of freshmen that are going to have to make an impact, especially at those lower weights, because some of those guys that have been our lower weights are growing,
moving up. Yeah,
they're growing. They always do, right? So we're looking at that. But yeah, our first goal, we want to make state duels. We want to win the conference, and our conference is gonna be tough this year. But that's really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people to, hit the ground running from where they left off. Some of them left off last winter. Not a lot of them though, so that's good. Some of them left off from like Fargo or trying to get to Fargo. And so these guys have been coming to open mats and dedicating themselves, and I can't wait to see what they turn out this year, because they'll be exciting. There'll be, we got some studs that'll be, putting people down, and it'll be good, because like I said, there's no easy night in our conference right now, with the duels that we'll have. And we start out the season with the conference duel, but then Friday, Saturday we go to Independence right off the bat, and Eastern Iowa has some great wrestling, and we were able to get third last year with a good tough lineup, and we're looking to try to improve that. I know some guys are chomping at the bit. Our 70-pounder last year, we don't necessarily know where he's going to be. Asa Hempstead had a tough draw. Some guy from Osage got him early, but he grew from there. And I say some guy from Osage, everybody knows who that 70-pounder is.
And Osage was on a tear.
Oh man, they just beat everybody. Well, at that tournament, it was Osage and Alburnett, and Alburnett had some studs as well, and they wrestled really tough. And that was Asa Hempstead's his name, and that was his only loss for a while. He went on a tear after that. So, and he made it to the blood round last year. He's looking to improve. So I'm excited to see, how these leaders and how these good wrestlers are going to help push the guys that are less experienced to be better. I'm really excited. We've got kind of a revamped coaching staff. We had a guy for 1 year, and then he decided to get out of teaching, so he didn't want to coach anymore. Didn't know where he'd be, but we were able to pick up a young man, Daniel Page, from, if anybody knows, Central Wrestling. He was assistant wrestling coach at Central, and decided to join our staff. And he's good. He knows his stuff. Obviously, we've got Coach Serrano. There's another young man named Mason McMillan from Loris, who just wrestled last year. So we'll have people at, kind of a lighter weight that, if anybody knows me, they know I don't wrestle with the guys that are smaller than me, which is everybody almost in the room. It's just kind of tough. I don't want to crush them. So it'll be good to have him to roll around with as well. And we've got, we've just been, like I said, we've been blessed. Again, our middle school staff's going to add a new guy. He's old school from, he coached at Winterset and Panorama. His name's Marty Niblo. He's been in Arizona for a while, but has really been an amazing coach throughout his career. And so he's going to help out on the middle school side. So we're gonna add some experience there. We've got everything in our corner right now. We've got some great wrestlers coming back, some guys that are hungry coming back, and great mentors and role models in the coaching ranks to help out. So I know it's football season, and I'm football right now, but I'm extremely excited for what we're putting together as far as a team this season.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it too. I can't wait to come hang out with the Wildcats for a day. Let me come on and film for our Access Granted episode.
Please do.
And I wish you the best of luck on the rest of the football season. I'll be paying attention.
Thank you.
And I'll look forward to seeing you when Norwalk sees the Wildcats this year.
That's right. Well, and Norwalk's bringing back 7 state qualifiers.
Bringing back a lot. Yeah, it's gonna be a good team.
So it'll be fun. That's what you want.
That's right.
You want a nice, fun, competitive competitive meet there.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming in. I'm
Thank
super
you.
glad I've gotten to know you now a little bit, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I want to thank IA Wrestle and IA Sports for being a part of this podcast and giving me their support as well. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for coming on the show, Coach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.